but I want to have faith in humans. Give me something to believe in. Earth below me, sky above me, fire within me. Brought to you by UPRN Network. I'm Trish Moe, and this is The Missing Piece. Good evening, New Orleans. I'm your host, Trish. This is The Missing Piece, and it is Monday, July 11th. Gosh, it's been a long week. I hope everyone had a wonderful 4th of July if you are in the United States. And mine was, I really did almost nothing that night besides my animals going crazy. But I would like to thank Carnation for sponsoring us tonight, as well as the network. And I am really excited I've actually been waiting for this for quite some time, to welcome Reverend and certified Tarot Master, author of multiple books, The Psychic Yellow Brick Road, Clean Out Your LifeCloset, You've Got the Magic, Who Needs a Genie, Corbie Mitleid. And she has over 50 years of reading experience and is a full-time intuitive counselor with clients worldwide. Robert Schwartz features her work as a channel and past life expert in his breakthrough series on karma and pre-birth planning, your soul's plan, your soul's gift, and your soul's love. Corbie's abilities include tarot, oracle card reading, spiritual intuitive counseling, past life retrieval and analysis, mediumship, and spirit guide conferences. So, wow, welcome, Corbie. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's great to be here. Look, before we even start, I got to send all my love to NOLA, because that's where my husband and I spent our honeymoon in 2002. So we often say we spent it in Pompeii because that was pre-Katrina, but we adore New Orleans. And so the fact that you are from NOLA just warms my heart.
And what's funny is I'm located in Kansas, actually. I think I mentioned that when I was talking to you about the name of your book, being from Oz here. But I just recently, it's funny how things, synchronicities work out. I was doing my family's genealogy, and I realized that most of my family that settled in the United States founded some of the oldest towns in Louisiana, which is really interesting, and I just happened to start the radio show there last year. So
very cool. So,
well, Corbie, first of all, you over 50 years of that is.
I was 18. I'm almost 68. So, add it up.
You look amazing for 68.
Two magic words, Trish. No children takes 10 years off your life.
Oh my goodness. I can believe that. Stress. I have two. So yes, definitely the stress that comes with that. But just the when I first started reading one of your reviews, actually, that you've done well over 20,000 readings. How many do you think you've done at this point?
Well, I figure I've been doing it full time since 2002, and I read roughly 1,000 people a year. And then there was everything I did when I was doing it part time since '94, and the 20 years that I read just for friends. So it's probably somewhere between 20 and 25,000 over a lifetime.
Wow, that's absolutely amazing. Just knowing that to have that personal, it's one thing that you can reach people nowadays, especially with the internet and everything else, across the world. But to do that on a personal level for that many people is absolutely astonishing. Um, so I what's very unique about you is one of the things that so many people often don't even consider actually is how to prepare for psychics, for readings, how to so many of the things that you cover, or even if they want to enhance those gifts and abilities on their own. um, so you said you started at 18. Kind of tell us the story of how you ended up on that path where you.
This is what I cheerfully call the 30-second elevator speech. When I was 9, I read a book called The Witch Family by Eleanor Estes, and so it was like, oh, there's magic in the world. I want to go find it. In 1973, when I was 18, I was working part-time at Spencer Gifts, and that was the year that Live and Let Die came out with Jane Seymour's Solitaire the Tarot Reader. Spencer had the James Bond 007 tarot deck, and I bought it because we were all hippies then. You had your elephant belt bottoms and the fringe jacket and the deck. Now, 5 years later, everybody else had moved on to roller skates and disco balls. I was still with the deck. I loved the stories they would tell. So for 20 years, I read for friends, making sure that I was a clear channel, tube for the information, and I kept my ego out of the way. In the early 90s, all of a sudden I could do hands-on healing and talk to dead people with no training. That's when the universe handed me my draft notice and said, greetings, you're working for us. Part-time, very checkered career, otherwise actress, author, inspirational speaker, video producer, legal assistant, writer for the graphic novel series ElfQuest, executive recruiter, always
Wow.
the psychic work on the side. But 9/11, as we watched the towers burn, I turned to Carl and I said, I have to do this work full time. People need to know there are other answers out there. He said, I believe in you, go do it. There you go.
Wow. That's incredible. I just got the chills because I was just thinking, I always wonder, I always have guests on that I'm intuitively led to, and there were numerous reasons. But I was looking at, which definitely defines you as well. My tea bag here, my little yogi tea, and it says, "Find strength in knowing that you can make a difference in the world." And I was thinking of how many people, as well as myself, probably have the same. I've communicated with spirits my entire life, with half the time running from that and not wanting to and being afraid of it, to finally embracing it, but never really having a mentor, learn any specific training, as most don't. And but I was just thinking how there's so many people who say they have all these gifts and just lack the confidence to start using them, then.
Now, I'm telling you, everybody who's listening, listen to this very carefully. You can do what I do. I'm not special. The way I explain it is we're all wired the same way. We all have 10 fingers. Everybody can pick out chopsticks with a little effort. Some of us really love the idea of music, so we learn to read the notes and we practice and we get pretty good. 1 in a billion is Elton John, but we all have 10 fingers. So do not tell yourself, I don't have anything. Yes, you do.
I agree. So I was trying to read that. I don't know what this is. No, that's
Just
sorry.
smile and say, live and be well, darling.
Moana, hi. I'm new to running the StreamYard chat thing. I'm trying to get better at incorporating the chat room here for you, especially for you. So it's um so after you mentioned the universe handed you a draft notice, if that's what you kind of explain that, because a lot of people probably wonder, you know, so many of us go through different jobs and different trying to, because obviously that's not what we're meant to be doing. So we go through these phases.
Yeah. Um, it was always part of me. And tarot is one tool. It's fun. It's very deep for me now. I've been doing it for half a century. But then a lot of people did tarot. When all of a sudden you can do things you couldn't do before, you get a sense that you are here to do it in service. That is the difference between true professional intuitives and all the Madam Hoo-Ha's and Swami Swalandas you see out there. Okay? So I started being able to do this. I was doing some past life investigations of my own. And I was working with a woman out in Colorado. God knows where she is now. She kept what she could do on the down low. She didn't want to lose her kids. But we were picking up information that we could not have known. She knew who she was during World War I in Germany. She was reciting chapter and verse from Ranglists, which were the lists of the battalions, squadrons, etc., etc. And this book that we found was published in 1898. She was rattling it off perfectly. Wow. She was able to pinpoint railroad stations that no longer existed, but we looked it up in a travel guide from 1910. There they were. So, and she and I had a connection. You can't make that stuff up.
Right.
So that's what told me there's something real to this. And because I wasn't a Madam Hoo-Ha or a Swami Swalanda, I wanted to put this out there where people could make use of it, which is why I, especially in 2002, I started going on the circuit, and I did psychic fairs that ran from Boston all the way to Windsor out in Ontario, which is above Detroit, and down to Virginia Beach. I traveled 45 weekends a year, 45,000
wow.
a year on the car. My nickname was the Travel Channel. But, Spirit knows when you need to shift, even if you are going, la, 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 I don't want to hear this. I wanted to keep traveling. It was great fun. I was a Hilton Diamond. I'd walk in, they'd go, we're not worthy. It was great. It was great. The expense, half of it was overhead, but I wasn't thinking that way. So all of a sudden in the summer of 2019, I had a herniated disc and pinched nerves, which frankly makes having triplets feel like a tea party. Took me about 4 months. I got back in shape, and the doctor said, we're sorry, but your career is toast. You are not going to be 10 hours one way in a car anymore, and you cannot load in and load out. So in the fall, very fast, I moved everything online. By November, December 19, I was all set. What happened in March of 2020? But the advent of the years of murder hornet bingo and hold my beer. If I had still been on circuit, I would have gone bankrupt. But the universe had moved me exactly where I needed to be. My business kept going without a click. So that's just one more thing that says you're supposed to be doing what you're doing.
Right. I did the same thing, except I'm one of those people that don't listen to spirit, or I should say I didn't back then, and attempted to move all of my stuff online, and I did. So that didn't work out. But I and going back, you said you started with the different tools of tarot. Kind of tell us that, obviously there's, like tarot, but what other tools? A lot of people don't realize that there's even other methods for that psychics use, and I think we all use different things.
Bunch of oracle cards, number one. Each one has a different purpose. They all tell me when I get a new deck what they want to be used for. Past life retrieval and analysis. Sometimes the past life will have a clue of what we're wrestling with this time. Okay. Yes, I talk to dead people, but I don't do it Lily Dale style, John Edwards style. For some reason, my guides wants me to do charades. Okay, fine. Basically, when you say, okay, spirit, I accept my draft notice, it goes rifling in your internal toolbox to see what you got. So with me, theater major at Brown University, acted in New York in the 80s and 90s, so I know character arcs. Words are my drug of choice. I've always been a writer, so I can tell stories. And I have been interested in history since I was a little schnoot, single digits. So that's why past lives are easy for me. You give me the same vision as you give to somebody over here who's competent. They might say, well, it's a long skirt and a big hat and it's in front of something very ornate, so I know it's old fashioned. I would see the exact same vision and go, okay, hobble skirt, picture hat, that kind of ostrich feather, and you're in front of the Brandenburg Gate. So this is Berlin in 1911. Which one's going to give me more information? On the other hand, do not ask me to do spirit art because I cannot draw a stick figure with a sharp pencil and a lot of prayer. Not in my wheelhouse. So
No.
it's like a doctor. He wears a stethoscope, but that's not his only tool. He uses lots of them depending on what's going on.
Right. Yeah, I typically well, it depends on the purpose. If I'm at a location, someone asks me that's supposedly haunted or with interdimensional being, whatever it might be, I might get messages and information through the radio or
EVP is very cool.
through a road sign or billboard or anything. But then if I'm just with a person, obviously that's going to be different. So
Yes.
there's multiple, and I don't. People always try to define. You always hear the clairs, all of the clairaudient, clairsentient, and a lot of people don't understand that. But that's really just using the different senses. I think for as a tool.
What I do with talking to dead people, I jokingly call it clairfeelant because I literally feel the energies.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't really matter what you call it. If it works, if it brings the information, if you feel safe using it, do it. Do it.
There's Moana.
Okay. Are we doing readings tonight, Trish? I wasn't planning it.
No, you do not have to.
Okay.
But
okay, let me explain Mona, and then everyone can listen. No, I don't just pick up your past lives. They have a purpose. Why do I say that? If you're a janitor in Des Moines and all of a sudden somebody tells you that you were Vincent van Gogh, are you really going to want to mop the floor? No. So when I do a past life, you give me an obsession or a phobia or a place you either love or hate that makes no sense, like I'm Scots-Irish, why do I have this thing about Peru? I'll give you 2 examples that I've done. There was a woman who came to me and said, I'm really worried about my son. He's 29, won't do a thing without checking with me first. He won't live more than a mile away. What is going on? So I went upstairs and I went, okay, it's 1944. This is Utah Beach, so it's D-Day. He's a soldier on the beach. His leg is pretty mangled from shrapnel. You're his commanding officer. You crawl over, you drag him over a dune to protect him. You take some shrapnel too, but you both live. And she looks at me and she says very quietly, can you see my rank? I said, yeah, you were a sergeant. She goes, he's called me Sarge since he was 3 years old. We never knew why. That's an example of when a past life is important. Second story. There was a girl from the Midwest, no connection, family or anything, but was fascinated by the Civil War. So I got the vision for her. I'm seeing a whitewashed room with a very low ceiling. In fact, there are 2 tall gentlemen standing up and they're bent over because they're too tall for the room. You're kneeling by the bed. It's a very dark gray dress with black soutache trim. Looks about 1862 or 3. And there's a little rickety iron bed, and there's a very old, wrinkled black woman in it, and she's dying, and you're all grieving because you got her up from a Mississippi plantation, and she was almost to the end of the Underground Railroad and freedom, but she was dying and wouldn't make it. And I opened my eyes, and this woman has tears streaming down her face, and she says, that's the exact dream I have had for 20 years, and I never knew what it was about.
Wow.
That, Mona, is why a past life reading is important, not just, hi, I must have been Anne Boleyn because I can't wear a turtleneck.
and that's one of the things I found. Really, I started getting annoyed when people would ask me to join investigation stuff, only because not at the fact that people were wanting to learn more about the history of different places and things, but because I'm like, if you have access, if you're at one of these places and you have access to the energy there and the people that have passed through there and what has happened and all this, and all anybody wants to do is try to get a hello or, give me a sign and make the lights flash. I'm like, you have access to ask them anything in the world to actually learn something about this event or whatever took place or the truth about it. And you're asking something to knock on a door. You know what I mean? And so,
And do you ever say to them, we are so grateful that you're here with us? Whether or not we get anything from you,
exactly.
please know we respect you and we are grateful that you're willing to try.
Yeah,
A little politeness
absolutely.
goes a long way, whether you're living or dead.
And that's why I stopped doing it, because I was like, I can't, it's so disrespectful to not only to mediums, to we're not circus performers, and neither are spirits, to
Preach.
exploit them. And I'm like, I'm like, here, imagine these are your own ancestors. Some of them might be that are here, and you're going through every night having them, basically exercising them, and that's
I know. I know, but it's what you say. I have literally had people come up to my booth at a trade show and say, "Tell me something you couldn't know about me, and if you're right, I'll have a reading." And I just look at them and I
Mm,
smile and I say, "I'm sorry. I don't roll over and fetch either." And I turn my back and they do not get a reading.
yeah,
People,
yeah.
it's one of the things that I try to train people with. We're treated like we're a service, like we're a burger or a latte or a car wash. I have literally had, when I was trying to get down a sandwich, a guy lean across my table, poke my sandwich. You don't need to eat right now. My wife needs a reading. Luckily, I had a front person who just slid right in front and got rid of them, because I guarantee you, you do that to me, you don't respect me, I will not let you anywhere near my energy.
Yeah, and I've gotten very, just because, and I've heard this, so, and maybe it's because the entire, psychic and tarot and all of that's has become um much more popular in the last few years, especially since the shutdown and everything. So, but now it's gotten to a point where people have been reaching out to me a lot saying, I've been so abused by my friends and family and whoever, and it got, years ago I started having that happen as well, where friends, it was like they didn't want to just enjoy my company anymore. It was always do a reading for me. It was became an expectation. And that
No,
was
it's
fabulous.
fabulous
Yes.
idea. You know, you wouldn't walk up to your OBGYN at a cocktail party and say, I'm having this problem, and lift your skirt. It ain't the right venue.
No,
And it's the same thing.
it is.
It's when people say, are you reading my head as I walk by? No, my guides and I have us open and closed sign. I'm closed right now. Thank you.
Well, not only that, there's like well, I guess there's kind of a universal uh what would you say? It's almost a universal law for most psychics, mediums, or for anyone really. You don't just go around reading into people's lives, and it's not
That's called a drive-by psychic shooting.
right. It's not polite.
But the thing is, a lot of rookies tend to do that because they see
Yeah.
Teresa Caputo going up to somebody manhandling the cantaloupes in Wegmans and saying, "Your Aunt Doris, she says you have a bald tire in the back. You're going to die in a car accident in a week if you don't get it fixed." She's telling you and walks away. That's not how it works. My darlings, listen to me. Number one, her PR people go and check out all the Wegmans on Long Island and they choose one. Then they interview a bunch of people and have them sign Marvel releases. And then it's 6 times rehearsed. Okay.
Yeah.
And, you know,
I mean, I've done it years ago when I didn't understand. I went through this whole phase of trying to save literally, and it wasn't out of a bad intention. I just, you know,
they mean well. But you see,
right.
I learned from the people at Lilydale. Lilydale, for those who don't know, is one of the most revered spiritualist communities in the United States. And they will say, "Excuse me, my name is Reverend Shirley, and I'm from Lilydale. I'm a spiritualist. I believe I have a message for you. May I come to you?" And if you say no, it's no, no matter what they were going to say. Now, you know, there's also that problem with healers, which drives me crazy. You're going to laugh at this story. You know, when I'm busy reading at a show, I can get a neck ache and a headache because I'm always bent over the desk. And, you know, little dancing raccoon over here and her spirit guide, Arctic Bear. "Oh, you have a headache. I know I can fix that." And they come at you like this. And I say, "I'm sorry, please don't." "No, really, I can't. I don't like anyone doing energy that I don't know. Trust me, back off. You're not very love and light, aren't you?" "Well, you don't listen." You know, you have to hit them upside the head with a clue brick several times.
Well, and the reason it took me a long time to realize that as well, and I didn't realize how important it was to do that to protect myself,
Hmm.
because I was initially one of those people at psychic fairs that uh, got overwhelmed by all of the energy, and I automatically assumed that everyone there meant well, and that is not. I learned I mean,
Yep.
I
They're
literally
our colleagues. They're not
oh,
our friends unless they earn that friendship. Really.
the first few I went to, I was literally ill.
Now,
I
you were
mean, to the
going
point.
to be a reader or you just attended?
No, I was just attending.
All right.
But since I'm very sensitive to other people's energies, obviously, I fell into the naive trap of thinking everybody was good and all that stuff.
This
And it literally made me sick for days, after this. And
this is
and then
why
to where
I
I was scared.
teach people when you're going into a psychic fair and you don't know any of us from Adam's
Oh
house
yeah.
yet, there are certain things you do. And I tell them, think about it. You're going to be a puppy.
Hmm.
The first thing you're going to do is you're going to go do your walkies. And you're going to go around, you're going to look at everybody, you don't take anything. Then you get paper trained, which is when you go and you pick up the rap cards, the business cards, the flyers, and you go and you read them. There'll be 3 or 4 people that you think you want to talk to. Go talk to them if they're not busy. If they are, talk to their front people. But remember, we hire our front people to say they love us. My first front person was the wonderful Laura Spickerman, who is my husband's office manager at the museum he ran Monday through Friday. Do you think
Oh,
she's going to dismiss his museum director on the weekends? Not. You want to find our testimonial books. We all have them. Flip through because these are comments from people that have had readings. Are we good? Are we funny? Are we friendly? Do we have specialties? Children, dogs, dead people? Were we accurate? Did they want to come back? And the last thing is check at your heart chakra. If the psychic doesn't feel like they have a brain in their head, they really give a damn about what they're doing, or they're going to give you good information, don't go there no matter how cool the wiki woo looks on the table. And if nobody there reads your charts, leave without a reading. There'll be somebody else, promise. You know, that is why I wrote this. There are 6,000 books out there on psychic development. I don't know of another one that is specifically written for people who want to go visit a psychic and use the information, but they don't have a craving to be that themselves. It's like you go to the art museum, you love sculpture. Do you really want to go home with a block of marble and a chisel and find the giraffe inside? No, you just want to go look at the marble stuff. So
Mhm.
that's specifically for people who want to be safe and find a good psychic. What to ask, what not to ask, when to run, um, when you shouldn't even get a reading, what we can do. On the other hand, you want to do what I do, then that's this. This is distilled 18 years on the road, everything I learned specifically for readers, healers, and vendors at spiritual expos and psychic bursts. It's not another book out there like that. And in there's some things called Corbie Gets Candid, and they're really important. In the back, I've got my appendix with a lot of the things that I did, including my sign-in sheet, which I insist everybody signs. Why? Not for the emails, but so I have their handwriting. Because about 15 years ago, I was doing a reading, an expo up in London, Ontario, and there was this 20-something guy who really didn't like what I had to say to him. The next morning, I found an anonymous death threat on my table. But
Wow.
because I had the writing on the death threat and the writing on my sign-in sheets, we were able to match it up, turn it over to the Ontario police, and they took care of it. That's one more reason why it is not all kumbaya, kids. This is a
No.
business. There are going to be people who are cutthroat. There are going to be people who think if she has a reading, I won't get one. So they're the ones that cheat. You have to
Well,
treat this like a business. You just do.
and it's very it's kind of like when I started hypnotherapy or personal training or anything like that. For psychics, it's very physical as well. We're using our energy, and people don't understand that.
Yes.
It's not just something on paper or online or something that it's takes a has a physical effect on us. And
Yes, it
so
does. Yes, it does.
um
We love it.
yes.
My 4-day show in Kitchener, I would read 70 people in 4 days and do 2 lectures. While I was doing it, I'd have a reader's high. At the end of the day, wheel me back in the body bag to the B&B and let me collapse.
Yeah.
Because the attention, the one-pointed focus, the dropping our shields to read for you, that's all energy.
Hmm. I used to be a dealer, a table games dealer at a casino
Oh boy.
before. Yeah, I Lord, that was a horrible. I ended up having a heart attack after all that because I mean, now I see why in hindsight. Like, because even first of all, um I mean, it's fun, meeting so many people and stuff. But that's a very toxic environment just because of the nature of there's alcohol and there's gambling and whatever. But
There's
people would
desperation.
yeah, and there's some very bad people that I mean there's good ones as well, but there's some very bad people that come into casinos, let me tell you, because they'd come up to my table and shake my hand. And this was back when I didn't really realize that just by touching someone, I could see certain things. Especially they would stand out like something so I would literally see people like burying bodies and stuff.
Mhm.
And then it got to where um my players would get very superstitious about my table because they knew, and it wasn't something I even knew I was doing intentionally, but if somebody disrespected me, they literally never won again at my table. It would change the energy.
Mhm.
And then I found myself reading players cards that I would deal them, not out loud, but in my
Mhm.
head. So it was very distracting. It was an interesting experience. That was just what 3 years ago, I guess. So, um, would not recommend it to anyone who's sensitive to such things. Though that's a bad idea. Um, now I guess you mentioned that there's no other books. Oh, I know what I was going to say with the what's the title of the one, the genie
This
that
one,
you just held up? Yes. Magic, Who Needs a Genie.
Yep, you've got
Um,
magic.
so that's probably the one I should be reading. Actually, I've never done an expo. I've never done a fair or anything as far as that goes, because I just recently started these projects of working on cold cases.
Mhm.
Um, because that's what has all literally, when from the time I was little, I wanted to be a Supreme Court justice when I was, I don't know, like 6 years old, and then a detective and things like that. And then I started picking up murder cases halfway across the country or world. And
That's a
so,
specialist. That is a specialist.
um, but recently, what I was going to say when I saw the cover of that is, my daughter and I were at a random like estate sale, and she found this little genie lamp this lady had, and I was like, that's going to be significant for some reason in my life here shortly. So that's interesting that must be why we were supposed to meet.
Could
So I
be.
know.
Could be. And the book is going to be useful for lots of other things besides reading at an expo. It's basically how to run a business being an intuitive. So,
And I think that's what people, especially like myself, especially I the people that have reached out to me recently as well. Um, when we're not the type to do, I've never had a desire to do personal readings for people, or I mean, I have just like for friends and stuff occasionally, but not, that wasn't my, I was geared more towards um spirits that have passed on, and historical things. And so people that have been contacting me recently about these things, they don't know how to be taken, I guess, seriously as a profession when you're not doing it at fairs, when you're not doing it, in the traditional, conventional way, I guess.
mhm.
Um, so that's something that would be useful to a lot of us. Um, now, I guess that's a good question on your. How do you decide what to put in the books? You kind of explained why, how you got to the writing of the books,
All
but
of them came from blogs I had done.
okay.
Um, I've always tried to teach people how to stay safe at a psychic fair, how to use the information. I used to have a column called Dear Corbie, where a lot of the questions came. And so I put the book together because there wasn't one out there. Now, these are all self published. So I have no idea how many I've sold, not thousands and thousands. I would love that. But I, just as I don't charge, I don't set up the paywall on my medium.com account. I'd rather have people read the information, get the information. The Psychic Yellow Brick Road book came from one incident about 18 years ago in Canada. It was one of the big shows, 250 booths at the Queen Elizabeth Exhibition Center. Now, no matter how good the promoters are, they can't vet all 250. So across the way from me was one of the fake gypsies. We all know what they're like. And we watched a woman going down the aisles and looking at everything. And the fake gypsy runs out, grabs her arm, and says, "You no need to pay 30, 40, $50. I need your pub for 10. Come." Drags the woman into her booth. 20 minutes later, we see the woman leaving, crying hysterically. We run over. "Are you okay?" The gypsy had said, "Oh, you have a family curse." "How many in your family?" "4. You have dog?" $50 every family member, 25 for a dog. He's small, we fix. And told the woman if she didn't burn 400 specially blessed candles at the Roman Catholic Church, I bless real good. Only $1 candle. Her entire family was going to die in a car accident in 2 weeks, and the woman believed her and gave her $400.
Wow.
I just said people have to avoid that, which is why the subtitle of the Psychic Yellow Brick Road is How to Find the Real Wizards and Avoid the Flying Monkeys.
Now, and you mentioned, people being taken advantage of. That was another thing that I struggled with. I never charged. I was on the other side that I just wanted people to have the information or to help them. So I became a volunteer, I guess,
Mhm.
to to people and never charged anything. And never, but you can't obviously make a living
When
that
you
way.
get your book, you are going to go right to chapter 9, how to charge what you're worth. Look, we are giving our time, we are giving our expertise, we are giving our attention,
Mhm.
and we deserve to get paid if we're at all reasonably accurate, courteous, and professional. Let's take a look at what it would cost me to do that 4-day show in Kitchener. $1,000 right off the bat for the booth. Then it's 5 days on the road, food, gas, tolls, and hotels. Then I'm paying my front person basically just to show up in Kitchener, Ontario from Albany, New York was $2,000. No, I can't reach it for free, but they always try. And the
Mhm.
5 usuals are, well, you're not doing anything right now. Why don't you read me for half price? Can me and my girlfriend come in and both have readings and only pay for one? Why don't you read me for free? And if you're really good, I'll tell everyone and they'll come in and have readings tomorrow. I really want a reading, but I can't afford it. They stare at you. What do you mean you won't give me a reading for free? You're not very spiritual. And whenever I hear that, I flip it on them and say, so you would say to your hairdresser, you're not doing anything right now, cut my hair for half price. To the plumber, put in my dishwasher and fix my sink for the same. And the one I love, because remember, here in the States, we pay through the wazoo for medical care. What
Mhm.
do you mean you won't see me for free? You're not very kind. You just want me to get sick and die, don't you? And people go, oh, that's crazy. I said, same thing. Same thing. And Dawn breaks over Marblehead for at least some of them.
And the crazy thing is, like, especially in America, we pay for things. Like, if I wanted to get my nails done,
Mm-hmm.
just my nails done,
Yeah.
it's not, I sure it's self-care and would make me happy or whatever, but it would be like 50 some dollars probably, and then with tip, more than that. And yes, I'm paying for an art, their service, their time, all of that. And I 100% expect to, you know, um, we pay for, I don't know, massages or women, and like getting your eyebrows, whatever it is. Um, but yet, and none of that stuff is actually, well, aside from the self-care aspect, but none of that's, um solving, any dream I've been having for 20 years, or helping me figure out who I am, or helping me heal in any way.
But
And
people think we're like carnival acts and we
yes.
are not respected. It's one of the reasons why I've written the books, I do the blogs, I'm in Robert Schwartz's books, and I do half a dozen podcasts every week because it isn't just I'm flipping out the cards. It is educating people on what we do and how we do it and why we are every bit as much as a professional as any of those other people that you mentioned.
I think, I see so many people, which I've gotten so much better now that I didn't do, but I think you see all of these immune suppressant diseases and cancers and such, and when I've started, this, I always notice a pattern of, especially people who are very gifted, and then they say that these things run in their family, these illnesses, and I'm like, man, that's generations of suppressed, they, none of them were ever fully who they were meant to be, which is what I think is wonderful about what you do, because you're helping people realize that.
Yeah.
And
And
it's
part of it is psychological as well. I mean,
mhm.
one of the things that I find a lot is women will come to me, they're 40 and 50, and all of a sudden empty nest or they're divorcing. Well, what do you want to do? I don't know. And they look at you absolutely panicked. And I have to explain to them, tell me if this sounds familiar. You're 4, and there's a plate of cookies. You're smart. There's more in the big cookie than the little cookie. So you go for that, and your mother says you're bad and you're selfish, so you're not going to get a cookie, and she gives it to your little brother who eats it at you. And then she compounds it by saying, besides, girls who eat cookies get fat. Nobody likes a fat girl. Do you really want the cookie? We are basically emotionally bludgeoned until by the time we're 6 or 7, we have the subliminal message. If we want anything, we're wrong, we're bad, we'll be punished, and we have to watch somebody else get it. Now, that's not psychic, that's psychology. That's my reverend collar. But then I show them metaphysical ways to get rid of that. But they need that understanding first.
It's hard. And I didn't realize the effect. Well, it didn't scare me. The effect of this entire narcissistic world we live in. I mean, literally, you go from the government to policies to doctors are narcissistic, to all of these, and it just goes on teachers. And I mean, don't get me wrong, teachers and are all great, but I mean, it's just so ingrained in humans. It's been that way forever, and so that's terrifying having kids. And I'm trying to do all the healing I can for my childhood traumas and not raise my children that way, but then I send them to school and I have no control over what happens there. And I have no control over what, the government does, or I have no control over um and there's nothing we can do about that. We can only control our own, um lives. But I think oh, that's a good one. Sorry, I got my ADHD.
That was stuff.
There was
Thank you for sharing, Cal. You may think that if you wish. I am not a trained dog. And I don't know if it could ever be proved. Can you prove Jesus rose from the dead? No, but a lot of people believe it. Does that mean it's right or wrong? All I can tell you is people have come to me and said, you opened my eyes. You knew things you couldn't have known. You helped me forgive myself for something after 36 years. I don't have to prove myself to anybody. 20 years, 20,000 people, sterling reputation, and people come back. Circumstantial maybe, but that's enough for me.
See, I think this is why I couldn't do personal readings, because well, to an extent, not like that at a fair, because I don't have a filter, and I would tell people, and I'm a nice person, and I don't have ill intent, but when somebody is disrespecting me, I would 100% tell them what's on my mind, and that wouldn't be
and
be well liked.
A lot of us, we can't explain how we do things, but I get stuff I couldn't know. Mm-hmm. For instance, there was a couple I was reading in Kitchener, and I threw some cards, and what came out of my mouth, God knows why, was there is an abandoned or deconsecrated church within about 2 or 3 miles from here, and I'm getting you need to open up a cafe bakery. And they looked at each other, and they looked at me and said, oh yeah, we know which one. We've been arguing about it for years. Now, I don't live in Kitchener. There's no way I would have heard that. Number 2, and this is why I will not do mediumship in a thing like John Edward or one of the big ballroom things. Now, do you want the PG story or the R story? You tell me.
Oh, I mean, we're, aside from really bad cuss words, we're pretty much allowed to.
Okay. there was a biracial same gender couple. The black partner had died and her white widow wanted to speak to her. Now you see this face? This grew up a nice kid in Cherry Hill, New Jersey. I have manners. What came out of my mouth in flawless urban ebonics was, well, shit, it ain't my white bitch. And I'm going, ee. And the woman in front of me is nodding and laughing because that phrase is how her partner, Isabel, walked into the house after every business trip. That would not normally come out of this mouth.
Yep.
But I know if I am doing mediumship, I cannot have my ego in there saying, oh, I mustn't say that. I have to say what I'm given because it will have a clue for the client, even if it doesn't for me. I have enough things like that happen. I'm content I'm getting something.
So that's another thing that you could probably explain better than me.
Mm-hmm.
When I'm given a message, I have to relay it that way. That was a great example of doing that. Whether I agree with it or not. So that's also probably another way to tell a false psychic from a real one, because it's like we can't lie about the messages we're given. I mean, we could keep our mouth shut, I guess.
If our egos
Sometimes.
are in the way, we think about us before the client. We say, oh, I can't say that.
Right.
Now,
But
this
as
is
far as like absolutely not, I'm incapable of, yes, I could not tell somebody something, but I'm incapable of lying about like that wouldn't,
mm-hmm.
because I think I would be so, my guides would first I'd probably be punished in
It
some
would
way.
short circuit your gift is what it would do.
Yes.
Now,
And
I have
then
agreements with my guides. I will not, I don't care if they know when someone's going to die. It is none of my business and I will not say it. And so my guides know never to bring that kind of thing to me because I believe we have more than one place of exit. We have 4 or 5 in our lives. And as we come up to them, the soul says, am I done yet? Yeah, no, yeah, no, yeah, no. And at the end, yeah, I'm done.
that's another good point though with psychics, because a lot of people assume that well, I even think that some psychics do it unintentionally. They think that because they see one outcome in a person's life, that that's set in stone. But that's absolutely, I mean, you still have free
That's
will,
the whole Bruce loves me thing. Who am I going to meet and when? Well, what I do is I show them about 3 years worth of who I see that could be a long term. Because if you only tell them one, yes, he's blonde, he's a lawyer, his parents are from Geneva, but he grew up in Toledo, Ohio. That's fine. Maybe that could be someone they would love and fall in love with and be great for their life path. But what if there's this Brooklyn performance artist whose parents were immigrants and he grew up in Brooklyn, who would do wonders for this person as well? They would still go on the life path. They're busy looking for the lawyer because they think we only have one person. Guys, if we only had one person, nobody would get divorced. Got a clue
I
here.
have a I have kind of and the interpretation from a psychic could be a little skewed. So I have kind of a good example of my own life. A few years ago, right before the shutdown, I was like, oh man, my family, a lot of them came from Scotland. I want to move back there. I would love to live there. Trying to figure out a way. The shutdown happened. I ended up having to relocate due to the house I was living in being sold. And I ended up living near a Scotland street in a not so great neighborhood. So
Yep.
they gave me what I wanted. It was just,
But
oh,
not the way you thought.
but I didn't specify, I didn't picture it being, but everything happens for a reason. I wouldn't be where I am today
Right.
had that not happened. So I 100% appreciate that.
It's funny. That's why one of the things I love about tarot cards is the allegory. And there are very often more than one meaning. Like this one,
Yes.
everybody sees the 9 of Cups and says, ooh, wishes fulfilled. And I say, but there's also a secondary meaning. Be careful what you wish for, because you're going to get it. You're an example.
Absolutely. Yes. Um, and that's so true with it. But on the other side of that, so many people are don't have gratitude for a
Mhm.
lot of the things they receive because they just think, oh well, I was supposed to be living in Scotland this year and I didn't get it, and but uh, most people just miss
Mhm.
all of the things they're given, and myself included. I'm sure I still miss tons of things, but um, I'm much more conscientious of there being so many different meanings for those things as well.
Yes.
Um, and and that's been a huge um, change in my perspective in life. That's it changes everything when was it Einstein that said there's two different people in the world, those that see magic in nothing, and those that see magic and see and find magic in everything. And
Yep. Yep. That's very true.
have you now, I don't know if you even, you said you don't do, well, you don't do mediumship in a like a
Yeah.
group setting, I
No,
guess,
no, no,
right?
because I won't censor what comes out of my mouth, and it could be terribly private. It could be what's going to open up my client to the waterworks because it's a healing. And no, nobody
Mhm.
else should get to see that.
Have
And
you ever worked with any type of like missing persons?
nope, not in my wheelhouse. I'm a healer. I'm a healer.
No,
Um, and when I say that, it is the emotional healing that's
mhm,
sitting in front of me that I think is what I'm supposed to do. I mean, I had a very dysfunctional childhood. Mother was an alcoholic, cross addicted with barbiturates, very emotionally abusive, two short marriages before the good one, poverty, abuse, rape. I've been through all of it. So I had that level of compassion for clients. Um, to go back to the mediumship for a minute, maybe this will give what's his nose a little something to think about. Um, I do the dog tags. What's that? I get four things first. Name who they were to you, the year they died, and how old they were, so I can get right into it. For instance, my father, Jerome Richard Dorkin, who died in 2001 at the age of 80, tells me nothing, but gets me into the energy. And then I just put out my hands and they just start moving on their own. And this is where the charades come in. They smoked, they did weed, they had an accident, they were intubated or on oxygen and couldn't breathe when they died. They had an attitude. If I get this for a guy, it's jokingly, oh God, I was gorgeous. And I get a lot of the attitude of the people. Um, there was a woman whose husband had died 6 months ago. She was from in York, Pennsylvania. She had no accent. I knew nothing about her husband. But when she gave me the name, all of a sudden my hands went out, my head cocked, and it was, hi, baby. He was from Texas. That's how we walked into the house every night.
that's
Those
you know
are not, it's a rose, he loves you, which is bullshit stuff.
mhm. That's a very good point because I do that so much, so often. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, when my kids and I are going through, we go to a lot of different historical sites, and so I love doing that.
Mm-hmm.
But all of a sudden, we'll just be walking along, talking, and one of my kids will be like, "What was that an Australian accent? Was that because I pick up?" Or if I'm in a cemetery, oh, I'll pick up, I'll get a pain in my side and see somebody was stabbed on their left side or hit in the back of the head or whatever it is, and then I relive that energy. And I was going to say about the mediumship thing, one of a project I'm going to be doing in the future. I just started on my other um, podcast and blog. Is I was like, since all of these mediums have been contacting me for the true crime stuff, anyways, to put uh, there's so much competition in the paranormal field, which is ridiculous.
Yes.
Because when it comes to missing people and cold cases and stuff, the more the merrier. If someone's getting a message about that,
Mm-hmm.
then it's great to contribute instead of competing. Every there's enough There's enough
There
cold
are
cases
now
in the world.
8 billion people in the world, and I can't read them all. All
Uh-huh.
y'all who want to be psychics, come on down. We will need
Absolutely.
you. And I'm 67. I'm not going to be around for another 40 years. Time for you to step up. And this is why I consider myself an elder. It is my duty now to pass on everything I know to the next generation of intuitives. No, there's no competition. Who else out there is going to have my background, my presentation, my charisma, and all the things I've done? I mean, I've done stand-up comedy on You Think a Psychic's Life is Easy. I'm not worried that a little rookie, 3, 4, 5 years under her belt, is going to take my clients. No, she's not. But if I can if I can raise her right, then that is part of my duty as a professional intuitive.
I assume you probably at a lot of these fairs, um, do people tell you that you're intimidating?
Oh
I
yeah.
can see I
Well,
can see
that's
all the
part of being a charismatic. They love
right.
you or they hate you. And I
I
just
get that all the time. Yeah.
fine. But one of the things that I do is I'll find the rookies and I will introduce myself and ask them about themselves, bring them over to my table, give them like my rack card, show them how I do these things, and say, you are welcome to use these for your own ideas. Only thing I ask you not to do is take my words. One time I had somebody plagiarize, and they had been very close friends with me, and after that, they were dead to me. It's the one thing I said they must not do. But I will give you everything I know because you will use it differently
Hmm.
and you'll make it your own, which is how people decide whether they want us. Look, there are some people who need what I call the glurpy purple with angels. Hi, I'm Little Dancing Raccoon. I'm so glad to see you today. Like, thank you. I'm a New Yorker.
Yeah.
It's like, here are your opportunities and how to
Yeah.
grab them. Here's the tough stuff. Here's how to get through it or run it. Here's your toolbox. Go rock and roll. People who want Little Dancing Raccoon will be afraid of me. But people who are serious about what they want, they pour into my desk. And there is room for both of us. Both of
Absolutely.
us.
Yeah, that's one of I think if more psychics, especially on even any project for that matter, any books, any um, because for people like myself, it did run in my family, but my grandmother died before I was ever born. All of these people that could have taught that were close to me, that could have taught me at a younger age, weren't around anymore. So there, um, there's a lot of us like that were, and I grew up in small town Kansas, so it wasn't very Bible Belt,
Oh,
very
yeah.
religious, and that's that's actually where I was once very religious, and that's where many of these psychic abilities start coming out actually, and I described oh it was there was a shooting in Texas years ago, and my entire reality changed. I was sitting in church and somebody, it was like a movie, and somebody bust through the door and started shooting everyone. And I told people right after the service this, and I said, no, it was like I was right there. It was happening. And I could not. I was sitting in church. I couldn't have known this, obviously, I guess to answer. Um and nobody believed me. And then it was a few hours later they announced on the news that had happened, like an hour later after I had told everybody that, in another state.
Yeah.
And so it's things like that I guess if people want proof or whatever. For me, I've y- speaking of the genealogy, did anyone run in your family as
No.
far as
As a matter of fact, my father, who was my best friend, we shared the same birthday, he understood who I was. There are certain other members of the family who will not tell anybody what I do because they think that all psychics are cheats and charlatans and there's no such thing. So they tell people I'm a motivational speaker. Live and be
You
well.
know,
I can't change their minds, but I'm not going to give up the work I know I'm meant to do.
I know it was funny when I became a certified hypnotherapist. It was kind of it was one of those things when I was training. They use pendulums and all this stuff, but they don't call it that.
So
And I'm like, so now it's accepted because we changed the name. It okay, whatever, whatever. But it's the same thing. I'm like, I was born a redhead, so I knew I was doomed from birth. Um, do you think, one of the questions somebody asked was about, here it is. Stephanie Morrissey about the Council of Light.
They're not my peeps, but that doesn't mean that they're not real. The guides that I work with, the original guides, I flew with them in World War I 100 years ago. They're my peeps. I now work with an angelic presence in my higher self, which is that oversoul, everything we ever were. But the Council of Light, Rob's wife Liesel may work with them, I think. I'm not sure. What we call them is unimportant because they probably don't call themselves that, but they know we need to have names because we have these tiny little brains. Okay. If they are compassionate, if the information they give is healing, if they make sure that they don't feed your ego because you're channeling them, they're probably fine.
That is a huge, I actually just learned that hard lesson in the last year or two, that your guy, some of them, whoever you choose to listen to, can also be somewhat traumatizing if you allow it.
Well, I want to, I'm putting on my glasses so I can read this thing to you. This, for everybody who thinks they're getting guides, this is what you need to know. There are some very specific things that a spirit guide or angel will not do. If you hear these kinds of things from that little voice in your head, put it on the do not use shelf because it's not a spirit guide or an angel. It chastises you in a sharp or mean fashion, putting you down. It pumps up your ego at the expense of someone else. It tries to guilt you into doing something. It encourages you to do something that is illegal, immoral, harmful, or against your highest good, something your gut knows is wrong or not in your best interest. You get anything like that, it's your ego talking to you, nobody upstairs. Trust me.
Now, I guess that's a good subject as well, as learning to, how did you learn to trust your intuition?
Took me years, darling, like anything else that you work with. Now, there is a particular book that I used to learn, and it's called Opening to Channel by Sanaya Roman and Dwayne Packer. It's still out there. It's 30 some years old. It is a great book that teaches you how to connect with your guides, and it runs you through boot camp so you do it safely. And I highly recommend that book for people who really want to start doing this work. Because remember, it didn't run in my family. I had to teach myself
Opening
everything.
to Channel. And who did
Yep.
you say the author?
Wait, I recommend that thing so often that I actually have a copy of the cover that I often show right here. opening to channel, how to connect with your guides. And there's the name of the authors, real close.
And I'll post that on my page too,
Please do, because
along with.
there are a lot of books out there. Not all of them are good, but that is one that has been consistent for decades.
Now, you speak of, so have you ever encountered other beings, entities, I guess, that were not human?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess it's hard to differentiate to people when you speak of guides and angels. There's so many different
Mm-hmm.
theories on anything from extraterrestrials and demonic and things like that. Do you have any, I guess, experiences you could share with that? Like the not so, you explain the ones that chastise and such, but as far as I have a lot of my childhood trauma, I guess, came from different, uh I guess, some extraterrestrial and such. So
I've had negative human souls.
mhm.
Okay. One of them was a direct link. When I was first doing this in the early 90s, really didn't know how to take care of myself. Well, one got in my house, and I'm not going to discuss it or name them. Names are powerful, but it was terrifying. I mean, my cats went Halloween, and I saw the tail of my shirt stand straight up and a voice in my head saying, "Now do you believe I can't get in?" And there were hands around my throat. Well, we battened them down. But a dear friend of mine who on the astral has a neon sign that says, "I'm a professional and I don't care." This is back in the early 90s before we had, all the problems with TSA and stuff like that. He managed to get a 6-foot ceremonial sword through the metal detector like it was golf clubs. And we
Wow.
did, and he was good. And we did a clearing and a bottling up of this particular entity. This was when I was living in Atlanta. So yeah, there are nasties out there. But this is where, again, if a professional knows it's not them, they'll tell you who's good. For people that seem to have entities or passengers that they want to get rid of, things like that, there is a brilliant bruja in California. Her name is Katrina Rasbold. She's written for Llewellyn. She is sharp. And there is something called Olympia, which is a spiritual cleansing that she does. And she pulled stuff off me I did not know was there. And I was visiting. I let her master students work on me. And I thought, nothing. Oh, let me tell you, there was stuff. And also, I don't do health stuff. It's not my stuff. This is an example. When I do free reading hours, I have this. This is my friend Stacy Wells, who is the best medical intuitive I've ever met. And this is Katrina and her husband, Eric. And I share their information with people. Because if we don't do it, it is our responsibility for our clients to know who's good that does and send them. This is, again, part of the not competition.
Right. And that's just like a doctor or something as well, or a beautician or anything that they say, okay, I'm a massage therapist or whatever. That's nails or whatever's not my specialty, but here's someone that can help you, and it's the same concept, but people just don't get with the perception. That's now, do you, in the future, are you going to continue down the do you see yourself continuing this path as far
Are you
as?
kidding? I'm going to be doing this stuff until I'm 2 weeks dead, except then I have to do it as a spirit guide.
Yeah,
Yes.
I was gonna say I can see you coming back and doing the same thing.
Mm. Oh yeah. This is what I am meant to do.
Wow. That's now I found that not only with my past lives, but when I started, it's astonishing because I just recently got into because I figured out I was pretty good at it, doing genealogy for people and for cases and such. But um, there's a lot of things that people don't, even little things, whether it be, and I assume you've experienced this in readings for people of their past lives. Something that seems insignificant, or a story that great aunt, whoever had, or something, puts together these entire, multiple generations of families, that explains why something is the way it is today.
Mhm.
And a lot of times, for myself and the people I've done that for, it is very healing, because then you can see, then all of a sudden all this forgiveness and everything of oh,
Yes.
okay, I see why my aunt, uncle, grandpa, whoever, great, where that started. It's kind of like going back to your own childhood, it, and figuring out where you stopped caring for yourself or whatever. uh,
Mhm.
I think that, do you have that experience in people, with people dealing with past lives as well?
Yes. One of the things that we worked with Robert Schwartz is karma is not bad and good. Karma is five things: unbalanced energy, which is a neutral; healing, service, contrast, and healing of beliefs. And so you look at things that have happened, things that you come in with in this life, and then you see it is a healing for something else you've been through. We talked at the beginning, um, that I don't have kids. Well, that was a very deliberate thing at age 13, and I did not know why. I just knew I was not supposed to have kids, that it would be a terrible thing for me, and no. So I stuck with that. Doing past lives, I found out that in the immediate previous life, um, I was messing around with my husband's friend while my husband was on the road. I got pregnant. The child was stillborn. I was so distraught that I confessed to the nuns. It was a Catholic hospital somewhere in Chicago. And the nuns thought, well, God has taken the stillborn to his bosom and he's fine. But then when I got sepsis, childbed fever, the nuns all looked at each other and said, well, this is God's judgment on her. And I was left to die in filth and agony because they thought that was appropriate for this sinful person.
Wow.
So my not wanting children this time makes perfect sense. I need to heal from that trauma.
And that does, I think that there's a lot of things, even with my own, my own kids. I realized that my daughter, she used to have this uh, weird sensitivity to water and like fear of water, and I realized it was from a past life. And I think um, that's why I believe so much that these things, or my little dog, should be taught in school. Because I think back, what without religion, whether you're religion, that's irrelevant, because as far as being able to protect yourself, being able to understand that, especially with kids nowadays, they're so much more advanced than we are. I mean, I know my own are, and their friends and such. They don't realize that they pick up other people's energies. They don't realize the the things in the spirit, the unseen, can be dangerous. What's your opinion on that, I guess?
Well, There are indigo and crystal children. So not everybody recognizes it, but the way I describe indigos, most people go A to B to C to D. Indigos go A to Z to Green to Paris.
Yeah.
They struck with rules. They have imaginary friends.
Yeah.
They know how things run. They're the warrior kids. And then there are the rainbows and the crystals that are kind of like Marin County. Yeah, life's good. That's my buddy. Yeah, I can't see him. I can see him. It's all right. Yeah, they're just smooth. And people who are not used to that, yeah, we're coming to a time when the indigos and the crystals and the rainbows are going to have to be careful. They know who they are, but choose who you show it to.
Shoot, I'm that way as an adult. If I had a dime for every time somebody told me I'm too intense, or that my life and the things that happen in my life, um, they they can't wrap their head around. They can't, and I consider it magically. I'm like, what, this doesn't. But I grew up kind of secluded, and I grew up on top of a mountain, and so I thought those things. Everybody talked to fairies and forest elementals and spirits and everything, that those were my friends, and I just thought it happened to everyone. So I was completely unaware of that, and faced really harsh feedback and, I guess, resistance from from it when that did happen. um Another thing I wanted to ask you was your view on multiple dimensions
I'm sure they're
or
there.
experience with it.
I'm sure they're there. I haven't had any experiences with it, but that doesn't mean that it isn't around. Again, this is, what do we want to specialize in? I am especially good with rookies. Okay. My very closest friend, Stacy Wells, she and I were the two main channels in Robert Schwartz's series that went through all three books. Stacy is very much like your brilliant technical surgeon. She works very high level. I'm your priest, inspirer, storyteller. I'm the one that you'd sit around the fire with somewhere in 12th century Scotland and learn that way. We all have our specialties. She would be someone who would very much deal with multi-dimensions. I'm the one that tries to tell the allegory stories and bring you the mythologies. So we all have our place.
Well, I just meant on, I guess, a personal level of, I never, so I think with situations in my life, that have happened that a long time ago, before I realized uh, there's much more to our reality than ever meets the eye. I I couldn't differentiate between what might be, things would happen, or I've had vivid dreams, obviously, my entire life, but I couldn't differentiate what was a dream, um, or what had happened in a dream, whether that was, or even in reality, if that was a past life with the same people as different characters now, because obviously that happens all the time. Which is funny, why when I first noticed your book in reference, to the Wizard of Oz, obviously that's what happens with Dorothy, and she notices all of the people in her life um, are also in her um, alternate reality, I guess. And so I couldn't differentiate people in. I didn't know if that was a past life or an alternate reality. So
Could be either. It could be either.
yeah.
Um, it's contemplating these questions. I explain to people, it's like bringing an ant into calculus class. Not only does his little pea brain not understand it, but he can hold a pencil in his whittle paw. I mean, that's who we are.
Yes.
We're not going to know anything until we're dead, and then I think we're not allowed to come back and tell you.
Well, not only that, I 100% believe in because after communicating, there would be um, beings from other planets that would communicate with me at a very young age, and actually, I believe I understood it better then because I had probably come from that. So at a young age, it was in my memory, and so now if they try to communicate that to me, they're like, "That's your linear thinking, human thinking." Um, there's no words. So they relate it to me as in the same I try to, although animals are way more intelligent than we give them credit for. But
Mhm.
when I try to communicate with my animals,
Mhm.
I'm like, okay, they don't speak my language, so I have to think in pictures. And then it's funny to me because I think of my guides doing that with me. I'm like, they probably think I'm so
Yes, I mean, we can sometimes become fluent with particular species. I am
Mhm.
relatively fluent in Maine Coon cat because I've owned them for 40 years.
Oh wow.
Um, they're little dogs in cat suits. They're wonderful. Um, but cats only meow to their people. They don't meow to each other. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like they're speaking pigeon Maine Coon when they meow at us, and because we don't read an ear flick or a whisker twitch. So yeah, um, it's a funny thing, and I learned this when I wrote for ElfQuest for so many years. It is a brilliant fantasy series that's been going since 1978. It's multiple millions all over the world. It is beloved. It is legendary. It taught me how to think about other. And very often the ElfQuest fans would be so enamored of the stories and they would say, I've never felt at home here. I always feel like I belong somewhere else. And to this day, when I get that kind of a vibe from a client, I'll tell them, I want you to close your eyes. I'm going to give you 2 words. And without thinking, I want you to immediately respond to which one it is for you. Human, other. And if it's other, their eyes fly open. It's like somebody sees me. So yeah, there are half wings down here. Foreign exchange students, if you will.
Boy, that's funny. Uh, what about plants? I
Um,
guess.
I have a black thumb. I kill plastic plants and air ferns. Don't ask me.
But but I guess I'm the same. I do make an effort though because I love plants. I love the energy they have. But in nature, like trees and such, have you ever communicated? Um,
There is one, it's very funny. There is one particular group of trees that's right at the end of our driveway. And there's one particular formation. And when I walk out every morning, first thing I say is, Good morning, grandfather. Just it's the grandfather spirit in the tree. Think back to the Walt Disney thing, Pocahontas. Um, of course, there is consciousness in absolutely everything. There
a-
is nothing that's really
Absolutely.
dead.
Mhm. And anything that's rooted, especially in the earth, that was one of the main eye-opening experiences for myself. When back before I really embraced or even started. I'm one of those people. I just turned 41, so it was when I was diagnosed with Lyme disease back.
Mm.
I was 37, I want to say, but that was a year that my whole world, changed as far as that goes, and that's the first time I was on this same. Oh, so
Manfred.
pretty.
This is Manfred. He very often hangs out. He is not the 27-pounder.
That's like I have a Bengal I adopted.
Oh,
Actually in the
Bengals are
fall.
spring steel and schizoid. Are you kidding?
He's he's a character. Yes, I yeah, and so when I started doing that, I thought I was crazy. I'm like, this tree just talked to me, and they said, it was on this route I used to go walk on every day, run on, and by river, and I touched where a deer or something had rubbed its antlers and cut the tree. And I don't know what inspired me back then to do that. I was like, maybe my energy, I felt bad for the tree, like I was healing it. And they said, "We'll miss you." And I'm like, "Miss me? I'm not going anywhere." I moved 2 months later. Yeah, had no idea. So um one of the main things, I know we're almost running out of time. Um, you said initially that anybody can do this work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can.
I agree, absolutely. But people argue this all the time and say, no, 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 this isn't. There's no way. I have no abilities. Blah blah blah. I guess what is your response to that? I'm sure you get that
We're
a lot
all
too.
wired like the same house plan. It's your circuit breaker. Me, my circuit breaker's off, the power flows. People who think this is the devil's work, it's on, locked, and rusted shut. People who
Yes.
say there's nothing to this, but they always know when the mother-in-law's got a call, they have a shortened system. They think they're not getting anything, but they are. It's that simple.
My cat. That's my cat. I don't know what's wrong with her. um, and tell everyone, I will also post it again on my page where they can find you, where they can find your links, what site you prefer. Um,
Trish, they can't avoid me. They really can't. My website is Corbie Mitleid. Facebook, Corbie Mitleid, Psychic at Fire Through Spirit. Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, Medium, Patreon. It's all Corbie Mitleid.
do you have any upcoming events that?
Well, it depends if this is going out live.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because if this was going in October, it would be a different thing. This month, I do shows in this area. I still do. There's the Summer Fire Witches Festival, Sunday, July 31st. And that's in Guilderland. You can find that on Facebook. And I always do the Mind, Body, Soul expos at the Saratoga Springs Civic Center. There's one there on September 3rd. And then there's going to be an event at, I believe, either the Desmond or the Gideon Putnam in October. All of these things are always going to be on my website. Just go under the thing that says "Where's Corbie" and you can find me.
Oh, that's exciting. I moved back here from New York, and I've been planning on going back to. I haven't decided when exactly. Um, Back to the Northeast, just for a trip, sometime in August or September. But that would be so exciting to meet you in person and get to chat, um, because you have. I just want to go out and read You've Got the Magic, Who Needs a Genie book now, because I already see that that's going to be useful for me. You're probably like, this girl.
The one thing I'm going to tell anybody who gets my books, please, 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 I beg you, leave a review on Amazon. When you're self-published the way I am, until you have 50 reviews for the book, they shove you on the back shelf behind the pickles. And unless people go really looking for you, they'll never find you. Reviews are so important to us.
Now, is Amazon the only platform you're on aside from?
Pretty much. All the books are Kindle and paperback,
Okay.
but I only send the paperbacks out in the States.
Yeah, I saw
And
that.
Clean Out Your LifeCloset, my first book, is actually also an audio book that I read. I did. So it is all there. But you know what? When you order it from Amazon, you're going to get the paperbacks from me because I'm the one that
Okay.
has it. So it's okay.
Well, you're an absolute joy, Corbie. I've had so much fun speaking with you. I would love to have you back as well.
Well,
I'm gonna I'm
you know,
gonna
if
read the
you want to
I'm gonna
do a reading show, we can do a reading show.
That
Not.
would be fun. I have actually never had anyone um, do a reading show
Oh,
um,
I do.
on
I
Missing
do one
Piece.
hour free readings every month on Facebook, and in an hour I read somewhere between 30 and 40 people because it's like this. So no one is going to get a 10-minute reading from me. It's you
Right.
post a question, you get a reading. But sure, I would do that. That could be fun. I just have to have my head prepped for it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and that's not what I wanted tonight. I wanted to learn your story more about you and what you do. Um, and that's mostly what I used to co-host Chasing Prophecy, which
Mhm.
was more paranormal and conspiracy theory geared. But on this show, that's why I called it The Missing Piece, because it was much more personal. And I reached out to all of my guests because they, every one of them had something, obviously, to help me on my path, but I was hoping to um, help other people all across the world as well. And stories of transformation, stories of uh, but the psychic and the mediumship side, I never knew, until doing this, until how many people struggled with everything that your book talks about. And
Mhm.
and the fact that there's nowhere to find that information and how intimidating it is. Like I said, I've talked to a lot of people now that are in this field, and I know there's others out there like me now. But in the beginning, uh, it was the same as like going into a gym for the first time, or
Mhm.
I was terrified to go to just to even be a visitor or at at a psychic fair. I didn't want. I was like, oh, can't look at it. Don't make eye contact. Don't. It's terrifying. And there's so many people that were like me, and I didn't realize that until until recently. So. Um, I think what you have to share, and the knowledge, my gosh, I if I could sit down and just take notes for hours from you. Um, but I'm going to post these websites again, and I look forward to not only reading your book. Hopefully, I can meet you in person in the future, and we'll have to set up a time to have you back on as well.
Okay.
So.
As we say in New York, we'll talk. We'll have coffee.
It's funny. So I moved to New York from, well, the first time from the South, and when
Where
people
in the
say,
South?
Georgia,
Where in Georgia?
actually, I was outside of Savannah in Hinesville.
All right, you were way down. I was
I was
up.
in the dirty
We may have
South.
talked about this. I was up in Marietta, Georgia,
hmm
which is about 10:30 on the 75-85 circle. And to this day, I can still give directions by the Big Chicken. You say the Big Chicken, somebody knows you really did live in Atlanta.
You know, uh, Georgia's I worked between there and Jacksonville Beach,
Hmm.
and I never knew until it popped out of a book I didn't even know I owned about
Hmm.
the Georgia Guidestones. And it's funny, I just posted about those last week,
Yes.
the day
Yes.
before they were vandalized. And I kicked myself that I I think my cat, that's my daughter's cat actually. I think she's hungry. Oh, it's funny that I don't know what this means, but it's funny that popped up because her name's Hazel. Um but I can't believe I never visited the Guidestones or even knew they existed. But I mean, I haven't lived in Georgia for
I hate
it
to
was
tell people the Uber Christians or whoever took them down and are so pleased. They have spread the word more by destroying them
oh,
than they
absolutely.
just let them up.
Yeah. Yeah, if they didn't want that out there, then well.
Here they are
And
now.
like I said, I have this little informational an exact replica of the Guidestones, word for word, everything that is on them that I didn't even know I owned, like a little information card.
Mhm.
That popped out of a book I didn't know I owned months ago. So you're absolutely right. Just because they destroyed them, that information's out there. It's like a thought. It already
It is.
no stopping it now. But yes, it does spread the word. So that was um, one of the amazing things. But I never knew those were there when I lived there. But when I moved to New York, everybody thought that I was very slow. And I'm like, okay, well, I thought I had to speed up when I came to the Midwest. Not in thought, but in just everything is so much different out here. And that was
Yep.
one of the last things I was going to ask you. What made you choose the title, inspired the title to your book?
What, Psychic Elevator Road?
Mm-hmm.
Because words are playful. And my editor, Bernie Young, and I were trying to come up with something that didn't sound like every single other book out there. And we came
That's
up with
true.
Psychic Yellow Brick Road. And then underneath, I said, yep, How to Find the Wizards and Avoid the Flying Monkeys. And we both fell out of our chairs laughing. We said, boom, that's what it is.
And have you ever been to Kansas?
No, ma'am. No. It's like, I was in Georgia for 9-10 years, but I am not a magnolia. I'm a bagel. I really needed to come back to New York.
Yeah, Kansas is if you ever get a chance, there are some absolutely profound things to see here, uh, that we have our own. They call it. I think they renamed it. It was the Badlands. It's these rock formations out in western Kansas. They renamed Little Jerusalem, but the rock formations themselves. And there's a reason. There are so many places around here that, growing up, well, I didn't grow up here my entire life, but part of my life, I never knew existed. And there's a reason there's so many movies based in Kansas, Superman, all of them,
Mhm.
because it truly is a magical place. I mean, I know how Dorothy, how that story came about, but it's also, there's also a lot of tragedy in the history of Kansas as well, being the heartland. So, um, as far as well, I think that's not only was that the main reason that drew me to you was the title of your book, um, but the symbolic nature of that in not only my own path, the following the yellow brick road, following, the path you're meant to take, and all of that,
Yes.
and again avoiding the flying monkeys, which I'm going to struggle with my entire life. So, but
Yes.
I'm hard headed, so.
It's okay.
I will. And I'm gonna have to send you a picture of the little genie lamp my daughter found, because you'll enjoy that. But that is all we have for tonight. I am out of time. It has been a pleasure, Corby. Thank you all for listening. I will post, Corby's website again on my page, um, and as well as some of the other things she's mentioned. Read her books. I can't wait to book you again for live readings, because it seems like that from all the chat discussions. I don't know if you can see all of that, but
I can.
um,
I can.
some of them were we have we have others too that, um it'd be interesting for you to connect with people from maybe other countries and such.
Sure.
Um so I look forward to that. Otherwise, I hope everyone stays safe. Have a wonderful evening, and we will see you again next week. And I'm in control of this. I'm trying